Welcome to From the Heart, the channel that begins to delve into emotional abuse and how toxic relationships affect not only our emotions, but our thoughts, behaviors, and most importantly, our sense of self-worth. Here, we'll discuss how and why we end up in toxic relationships and understand how we can make decisions that are right for us. We'll also discuss how we can grow healthier and stronger as we focus on our self-worth and develop self-love. My name is Sonia Gandhi, and I'm a therapist, and I'll be your host, so please be my guest. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with those who you may feel really need to hear this information. Let's begin. Hi, everybody. Welcome, and I hope that we're all live and people are able to see us. And I'm hoping that people can put into the chat, if you can, just to make sure that we are streaming live. Great. Okay. So I thought it would be great if we will introduce ourselves, and I'm going to ask Nicolle just to share a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Thanks, Sonia. So hi, everyone. My name is Nicolle Kopping-Pavars, and I was a family law lawyer up until the 31st of December 2021, when I decided to, there's just someone in the waiting room. I'll just, perhaps we should just let everybody know if they come in here, if they can go to the YouTube link.
So the YouTube link is put in our chat here. It seems that the links got confused. So we apologize for that. It's our first live. We're going to carry on, but anybody who's come through the Zoom link, if you can just check into the chat, cut and paste, and then head over through YouTube live, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. So where was I? So I was a practicing family law lawyer up until the end of last year. And I then decided this year that I wanted to focus on mental wellness within the law and provide workshops and training on bringing, because I think those two, particularly our mental health and law, we seem to silo them, and they actually connect. There's a huge big connection for them, and we can't actually disregard them. So I want to bring those together. And then what I also am doing, because of my legal family law practice, I am a divorce coach. I'm a different type of divorce coach, but I help people through the transition from a more practical strategy point of view that can help you and your lawyer through the process.
Wow. Okay. So, and there's definitely a need for that. So I'm so grateful. And I hope that there are people here who can use your services, because I know certainly I have clients who struggle through the court system. I'm a social worker, and so I'm a therapist. I'm specifically working in the area of narcissism. And so Nicolle and I happened to get together and start talking about narcissism. And you know, I really moved into this field as having personal experience with narcissism, as well as professionals. You know, it was in my workplace constantly. Personality disorders are such a difficult area to work with. And so it just was something I fell into, and there's such a demand because there's a lot of people who are just realizing that they're in a toxic relationship and not necessarily knowing what that is. And of course, people will go on YouTube and check out information and then realize that they're in these abusive, toxic relationships. So, I mean, today we wanted to talk about the legal system because, of course, people have their own personal experience with narcissism in intimate relationships, whether it's in a couple or whether it's in a parent. But lawyers are also experiencing challenges with personalities, with these personalities.
Absolutely. And I think this is why we were discussing, and we were talking about this. You know, a separation in itself is terrible. You go through all the usual 5 stages of grief that you would go through. They put it up there with death. And you really, when you think about it, a separation is a death of its own. It's the death of a family structure that had been created. You might be creating a new one. It's the death in the hopes of dreams of being with this person for the rest of your life. So it really goes through it. It's up there with death. So in itself, separating is traumatic and devastating. It also can be quite releasing and freeing, but you have to get there. But when we're working with a file that has a narcissistic personality on the file, it's almost as though it's separation on steroids. Everything is just bigger and everything is just concentrated, which really makes it difficult. And so I think when we were chatting, we were saying, well, what is behind the scenes? What is the lawyer actually dealing with when they've got somebody on the other end of the file who is a narcissist? Because this file works very, very differently. And this file is more frustrating than any other file. And the reason why it's so frustrating is sometimes the lawyers don't realize that their clients are narcissists until either their clients are narcissists until it's too late and they've been charmed and they have been, caught into the spider's web of the narcissist. Or when you're a lawyer who's got a narcissist on the other side, you are always playing this game of wanting to shield and protect your client as much as you can. But that also means managing their expectations, because this file is going to be slower. It is going to be more expensive, and not even necessarily from the lawyer's point of view. It's going to be more expensive because a narcissistic personality is going to put as many roadblocks in as they can to extend the process.
Nicolle, there's a lot of lawyers who don't know what narcissistic personality disorder is, or that they are dealing with it. They just know that they're dealing with a difficult personality, or do they chalk it up to, it's just a difficult client? And I find in working with a lot of the clients who are going through this process is they're struggling to find lawyers who understand, and they feel like they are having to explain and to justify that I've got a partner who is difficult, who is challenging, who is all of those things. And so there's certainly a learning there for lawyers in terms of how they deal with a narcissist and how you protect your client, because the clients are traumatized and re-traumatized when they're not just dealing with their ex-partner, but a lawyer now who they have to, explain, this is my partner and he is this, this, and this. And oftentimes what you realize is that your client actually may be the narcissist, but they're projecting all of these issues onto the other parent. And so you get just as raveled up in their chaos as the partner does, and start to experience some of the same things, because narcissists are grandiose, they're arrogant, and they want to be smarter than other people. And so these are often also people who end up not retaining lawyers because they end up self representing, right?
Most of the time. And why? Because they think they think they're smarter than the lawyers and they're above the law. So that's very often, that is a huge issue that lawyers have. And there's so many things that I want to unpack that you just said in those last few words. But this is another difficulty for lawyers who have a narcissistic personality as the other party, because what happens if they are self-rep, then it's almost as there's now a double duty on the lawyer to also give them information without giving them advice. Tell them what the rules are with not appearing demanding. And so when you go into a courtroom, because they will initially, before judges maybe click on to the idea that, oh, maybe this is a narcissist, judges are going to be very open and willing to try and assist the self-rep. So they are going to assume that you, as the only professional on the team, does what a professional should do. extend your courtesies, extend your knowledge if you're able to it, explain certain things without giving advice. So it makes it very, very difficult because there's an added burden on lawyers now.
Absolutely.
And which may come out, you know, if a judge suddenly realizes, or through the 15,000 motions that have gone on, oh, something's not adding up here, then they may and start being more punitive towards the narcissistic personality. But before then, it's a huge burden that is placed on the lawyer, and the burden is then layered by, I can't charge my client for the extra work that I have to do because it's a self-rec person, which is exactly what the narcissist wants them to do. They want to bleed them, drain them every way possible. Financially is the best way to do it. And they will find a way not just to do it in family court. They'll find other avenues to do it in as well. So that's why I'm saying these files are really complicated, and lawyers very often lose money on these files. I know that might sound ridiculous. How can lawyers lose money? You charge a fortune, but you do lose money because you aren't charging for a lot of things, because a lot of us do feel really bad. How can I charge my client for X, Y, and Z? So what happens then is, if lawyers don't understand the narcissistic personality, is sometimes, I'm not saying always, but sometimes your lawyer might feel resentful when this file comes up. And resentment is an emotion that comes out of boundaries being pushed. And everyone's boundaries will be pushed when there is a narcissist on the other side. So then that comes in. So if lawyers don't understand the characteristics, or that they're being played, or they are being pushed to play the game that the narcissist wants them to play, then they may feel resentful. And they might go, oh no, not this file again, and try push things away as much as possible, you know. Or sometimes they have nothing to say to their client because it just delays. And then it seems as though they're not communicating, but lawyers are going, I don't want to have to charge you to write another email saying nothing's happening at the moment because we've had to extend the timelines, or we've had to do whatever. And then clients feel my lawyer doesn't communicate with me.
Nicolle, I find a lot of my clients, when they come to me and they're in these court processes, they're struggling because they don't want to communicate with their lawyer, because they're being charged for emails, phone calls. And of course, a lot of these clients have said to me, you know, my husband or my ex-husband is purposefully sending these long emails that I have to respond. Of course, they are completely hijacked, they're triggered. And I end up having to spend a lot of time with them, trying to help them read an email after they've sort of come down, because they go into fight and flight, and to be able to sift through and find the pieces of information that they do need to respond to. And of course, the lawyer is copied. So if the lawyer reads the email, then again, it's money that's being, you know, going out the window, so to speak. So what I've suggested to some of my clients is, you know, and I don't even know if this is realistic, is to instruct your lawyer, you know, you're going to get tons of emails. Please don't read them all. Let me read them. And not that they want to, let's be honest, they don't want to, because they are just so shattered by just the words, the control that's reaching through the computer and so on. But they're getting buried alive financially as well as emotionally. And, you know, you talked about being a divorce coach, and is there a role for you that may minimize, you know, some of the impact, some of the dollars that are spent with lawyers, for example, and how and what? Because I know I've got some clients who really could use a go-between, who understands the law, who can do some interpretation like a language interpreter, and to be able to minimize that impact for lawyers. Is that what you would specialize in?
Yeah, thanks so much, Sonia, for giving the opportunity to differentiate between a divorce coach and the divorce coach that I am. So a lot of divorce coaches are people who say we're going to coach you to live a better life through your divorce and after your divorce. So it's more about empowerment and becoming once your label's been stripped, becoming the person you're always meant to be. So that's kind of where a lot of divorce coaches come from. And they're fantastic. Where I'm coming from is I'm not here to help you spiritually. I'm not here to help you emotionally. Obviously I do, that's my training as well. I'm trained in compassion, and I'm a mindfulness teacher, and all of that good stuff. So that comes into what I do. But for me, it's to really say, I don't want you to have to spend hundreds of dollars for your lawyer to respond to the email. And you don't know what your instructions are, because at the end of the day, lawyers work on instruction. So they can guide you, but they can't answer your questions, and they can't do what they want. They have to get your instruction so that they know what direction to take. Some lawyers might be bullies, and they might say, no, we're not going to do this. This is the way that you have to go. But truthfully, they work on instruction. So when you have somebody who is in fight or flight, and they've been triggered, and there's a trauma that's coming up, their brain actually is only functioning probably at 50%, because the other 50% is trying to keep them alive. They're in survival mode. So when you literally, your brain doesn't know the difference between whether you've been chased by a tiger or you've just received an email that has triggered you. It's the same response. It's the same adrenaline. It's the same hormones. It's you go into hyper arousal. Your brain doesn't know the difference. That's why we have to get something objective to come. They say it's called flipping your lid, because your amygdala starts pumping so hard that your prefrontal cortex, which is what brings objectivity in, and perspective in, and logic in, it gets flipped like this. And so somebody needs to bring your prefrontal cortex down so that you can bring logic back in, because there is no they say when somebody, if you trip and somebody goes, be careful, but you've already tripped, what can you be careful about? The damage is done already. Or the worst is calm down. Like in the history of calming down, no one has calmed down for being told to calm down. In fact, what has happened is you've actually triggered that person even more.
Yes.
So the whole point basically of what I'm saying is that what I do is that I would go through the email, and then I would start bringing objectivity to it. And so what that is it seems as though this email is personal. It seems it's a personal attack against you, but actually it's not. It's their story that they're projecting on you, hoping that you will then latch onto it to give more fodder, should I say, so they can fuel you, and then you fuel them, and then you eat into it. But most of these are not, they seem personal, but they're not personal unless you make it personal. And that's what the narcissist is hoping to do. So what I do is deconstruct the email in such a way to say, let's get rid of all the stories that are either in here that aren't the truth, because most of the time the stories that are in the emails are not the truth. It's
Absolutely.
Perception that is being portrayed by the narcissist to get you to believe it as the truth.
The gaslighting. That's the common term, the gaslighting. Yeah.
So what I come in and do is, and I say, let's deconstruct this email.
Yeah.
Get to what is the most important thing about this email. Why is, and if there are lies in there, we don't have to say why they're lies. We can just say, this is not the truth. And we don't have to get into the details. So it's really deconstructing, and then also saying, if you have to, because you're always going to say, well, how do you want me to respond? Tell me how you want me to respond. So instead of now going, well, they said that I didn't do the laundry, but I actually did do the laundry. In fact, I did it 3 times. That's not useful. Okay. No. So what I help is say, this is how you're going to instruct your lawyer with respect to this email.
Right.
We're going to get through we're going to triage it. What's important, what's not important, or what is important that can be dealt with later when we've had time to investigate what is actually the truth in all of this. So pretty much, it's the 4 agreements that I go through with the clients. This isn't personal, so let's just take all of that out. We're not going to respond in your habitual way of responding, because that's how they want you to respond. So you're going to start changing the tactics, which initially is going to be it's going to feel even harder, because they know how to control you. And when you're saying, I'm not being controlled that way, they're going to make it even harder. to really put pressure on you. So you have to know that. You have to manage your expectations. We're then going to say, what are the assumptions that are being made here? Are there assumptions being made, or is there truth? If there's truth in that, let's agree to what the truth is, but let's just clarify as well. So it's really just deconstructing, making it almost objective and not so personal anymore. And also ensuring that our client, your client, is always doing their best. And so that there can never be any attack. This is how you responded. So it's almost like retweaking. What we have to do is we have to know our brain is plastic. And so what we have to do is we have to start restructuring our brain to create new pathways that are healthy, filled with boundaries, and strategize. So that's and what I'm also doing is managing expectations.
And I do the other piece, which is the bringing them down, the emotional sort of fallout, because, you know, the clients are very much attuned to the wavelength of a narcissist because they've experienced it for so many years that they just have to look at them and there's already this whole visceral response that happens. And I know that many of my clients are confused. They sometimes can't think straight. They don't know what to do. They don't even know what to say to their lawyers. Yeah. And so often, you know, it's sort of the team approach, as we've sort of mentioned, is having a lawyer is important, but a lawyer often is perceived as, by the client, you're going to save my life. You're going to get me out of this. You're going to get me out of this fast. And I don't want to lose any more money. I don't want to lose my children. I don't want to lose access to them, all of those things. And yet that's not it. I mean, there's certainly some merit to it, but that's not the end all be all of what the lawyer can do, because of course they're struggling with the same dynamics, email blasts, all of those things. And then, you know, your role in that in terms of how do we relay the information in a way that's succinct. And my role is over here, which is the emotional around, yep, I know that he has triggered your buttons and I know you got to go into court now. I had one client who had to testify through Zoom. And like we spent a couple of sessions before she went on, because she's like, I'm so paralyzed. And, you know, these are people who are professionals. They are not people who, you know, sit at home and are completely isolated. They hold jobs, they manage children. They're highly intelligent people, but in this one intimate dynamic, they are so paralyzed because, you know, I've heard some of my clients say that he has made it his job to bankrupt me, to I'm going to lose my kids, and I'm going to be out on the street. And that's their mission, right? They have verbalized that to these clients. And therefore, they are in such high alert every time that there's a text, an email, and it's such it's a struggle to live in that kind of reality. And, you know, having that full team. And I wish that judges were much more aware. And I think, like you said, over time, they kind of see the pattern. And that's exactly it, is with a person who meets a narcissist, gets into a relationship, it's a love bombing. It's the charming facade. When you first get into court, they are charismatic, they are well-spoken. And, you know, they often will manipulate people to be perceived as the calm one, the smart one, the rational one. And what they are doing is they're gaslighting and creating this doubt in the other parent to present as confused. They can't string a sentence together. They just become so emotional in court, they're crying. And so often, you know, I'm not sure how a judge perceives that as, oh, maybe this person is the one who is more sane. But there's a whole underlying theme that is happening in that dynamic, that it's so coercive, so toxic, so manipulative. And, you know, having this team for this client is so critical, as long as you know what you're dealing with, right? So narcissism, the word, it's a catchphrase that's come out. Everybody's saying, oh, you're narcissistic. And we all have narcissistic traits. We all do. It's just the degree. And so, you know, there's a checklist that's through the DSM. There's 9 characteristics. But we all probably at some point or another sort of hit some of those, but we're not consistent with them. And And I feel so badly for the clients who have to experience this ongoing. It's not just a 1-year process.
No,
It's a 5, 6, 7-year process.
it's ongoing until the narcissist believes that they have worn you down.
Yes.
And one thing that I think is so relevant that you were saying is judges don't, we put our lives to the judge and say, help us, oh wise person.
Yeah.
They know you for what is written on a piece of paper, which sometimes is just, if you've got a lawyer who's got extraordinary writing skills,
Yes.
That's how they're going to see you. You are words on a piece of paper. So that's the first thing that a judge knows about you. And then they get to see you maybe for an hour. And in that hour, how much have they really seen you? 5 minutes maybe, because the rest is are the lawyers talking and arguing. Maybe they'll ask you a few questions, so they don't really know who you are, and yet be saying, please, will you control and help us with our life. So, but going back to what you say, when narcissists are charming, they are such good actors. It's a role for them. So they will go into the courtroom, they will be calm, they will be respectful, they will have everything in order, they will be triggering you by a look, a glance, a nudge, a movement that they know is triggering you, that is everyone else is blind to.
Absolutely.
And so what happens is now you're going into this hijack, you're going into this amygdala hijack, you're being triggered, you're in hyper arousal, and maybe you might scream out, or maybe you will cry, or and then the narcissist goes, this is what I'm dealing with.
See, yep.
I've tried everything, Your Honor, but I just, so, and then what happens? So they might try that. And then what happens is when you are feeling so overwhelmed as it is, and now a judge is looking down at you as being a person that you're not, that triggers you even more. And so now you're going to get more emotional. And that's exactly what the narcissist wants to happen in court.
Absolutely.
So it almost, it's a game that they're playing, but once you're clued onto the game, you change the rules.
Yes.
And they don't like the rules being changed, but when you change the rules and they see the rules have been changed, they then start realizing what I used before didn't work, which means they might start using strategies that they don't know work or not.
Correct. And I would ask you this. So what I've often said to my clients is, let the lawyer do the communicating with the other lawyer, with the narcissist potentially, because they are the ones who reach out to opposing counsel. Because what they are doing is they are going to the client, my client, and trying to control and saying, we don't need to be in court. We can do this on our own. Just give into this part and I'll let you have this. And then, of course, they are notorious for then changing their mind, saying, no, I didn't say that. But what they want is some kind of an agreement that's not done through the legal system. And so what I have said often is, they are manipulating you, and they are continuing to try to control you. And you're paying a lawyer, but you're still continuing to have communication with this person who you want to extricate yourself with. Yes, there are children. There are so many layers to the amount of interactions that they have. But is it realistic, Nicolle, for me to say to my clients, stop communicating with them? Let the lawyer deal with it.
Because what happens is your lawyer is trying to do things within the law. The lawyer is trying to do things that are beneficial to you, for your family, whatever it is. And they, sometimes I think people don't see how much back work there is that lawyers actually do in the background. And so they're really trying to get things sorted out. Maybe they've spoken to the other counsel, maybe they've spoken to the narcissist, but they know at the background, they are the narcissist is doing something else. So all the good work that a lawyer may have done gets unraveled completely. And then it's very frustrating, because then what happens is the narcissist will come and say, oh, I don't have to do this because we've made our own agreement.
Right.
And then you go to your client and you say, what did you
do? Yeah.
And they go, well, he promised me, he said rather than paying my lawyer $500, which wouldn't go towards swimming lessons, and my kids really need swimming lessons, he said, if I agree to this, then he'll pay for the swimming lessons and we don't have to fight with the lawyer about it. So I just agree to it. something like that, you know,
Right.
it'll always be about money.
Yes.
So then the lawyer says, but you couldn't agree to that because it's interrelated with, it's not just 500 Rand, dollars. I'm thinking in South Africa now. It's not just $500. That's connected to this. It's special expenses. So
Yes.
the law is very specific with certain things. You can't just cut out one thing and then just not assume that it's not going to have a tumble down effect on everything else. So but that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to work outside of the system so that your lawyer can't actually get agreements put together. Yes. And that when that happens, and so now you've made an agreement outside of the system, your lawyer also starts losing trust and faith in you as a client. Because what's happening is now they have to do damage control. Now it's going to cost them $2,000 or you $2,000 for them to try and fix what shouldn't have happened in the first place. Right. And then you get upset because why is my lawyer doing this? Why have I just spent $2,000? I'm no better off than I was 3 months ago. Right. And that's exactly what the narcissist is trying to do. So they're also trying to damage any relationships of trust and faith that you have. And the trust and faith you have in a lawyer is the one that is the most important to them. So when they can start getting you into trouble with your lawyer, or your lawyer getting frustrated with you, that's fantastic for them. Right. They're coloring the client's view of their own lawyer. And yes, I mean, it's very undermining. It's very sneaky. And I've actually heard of some narcissists who have launched complaints against opposing counsel and want to get them fired. I have had 2 lawyers that I've spoken with who have said, I'm fed up with this client. And they've launched 2 or 3 complaints. And I've had my clients say, my lawyer knows this is a narcissist. I trust him. I like this lawyer, but he's going to leave because he's now being threatened with a law society complaint. And so they are totally taking this lawyer off. Right. And this is why I'm saying these files are like they're files on steroids, because what will happen is the law society will quickly see the lawyer will write back and say, it's not even my client, it's opposing party. We're going into court, and the law society will deal with it, and they'll close the file very, very quickly. But if you have 3 or 4 of them, again, you're not making money. And every time as a lawyer, every time you get a letter from the law society saying a file has been laid against you. Yes. It takes time. It takes time for you. You have to do a thorough job to explain to the law society. They're going to have questions. They don't just go, oh, yeah, we'll close the file. That also, you're not billing for that. You're not doing anything. Maybe in evidence, you could say, he filed 3 or 4 vexatious claims against me with the law society, but it's also eating away at your relationship with your client. Yes. And so that's why when you have somebody like me and you've got a team like us, it doesn't allow the narcissist to blame the lawyer for anything, because the lawyer is also getting clear, precise instruction. Yes. Which is really, really important. And it's coming from a place of a solid foundation, whereas very often you will give your lawyer instructions, but it's a foundation in quicksand. Right. Because it crumbles down very, very quickly. Yes. So that's why a team is so important. And communication, going back to your communication, and then I'm gonna I have verbal diarrhea because I'm talking about this topic. Oh, good. Communication is you have to, again, we have to build up courage inside of our clients to say, I do not want to communicate with you. My lawyer has advised me not to communicate with you. And they will get a barrage of 15,000 text messages and emails saying, who the hell is your lawyer? We the parents, they don't live in the house. They don't know our children. You're going to get it. And then, but just to say, my instructions are, if you have something to say that involves our separation, you have to work through my lawyer. Or there are fantastic communication that are free, like our Family Wizard is one of them. And what's great with our Family Wizard, there's a free version. I think maybe a version you pay $150 for the year. I honestly, I don't know the cost of it. But what's great with it is there is a tone barometer. So when you're writing an email, if it hits the red zone, it will not allow you to send that email. So the communication has to be respectful, because otherwise when you're using our family wizard, it won't allow that communication to go to the other side.
Right. Two things. One is clients are often going to a lawyer also for some sense of validation that they're not crazy, because they do feel crazy. They have been gaslighted and confused by their ex-partners to give in. They are being bullied. And, they're very creative at using lawyers as a tool to bully as well. But these clients come to the lawyers to say, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to pour out my whole story to you, and I need your help. And what they are, rightly or wrongly, it's not even a question of that. It's they're looking for validation that I'm asking for something reasonable, right? Like, I'm not crazy that I want my children to live with me, even though he says he's a better father. So they are looking for validation. And I know, some lawyers are able to sit down and have that conversation and listen. And other lawyers are, of course, very busy. They're dealing with a lot of other matters, and so they aren't. And so that first engagement, I would say, if I were to put out information to lawyers, is that first engagement is really critical for that client to feel, I can trust you. Can I trust you? Because I don't know, I don't believe or understand myself. I don't trust myself. I need to trust you. Can I do that? And so that validation piece is really, really critical. And I know certainly that when I'm working with my clients, that validation is really important, because they're questioning their sanity. They're coming and saying, I feel broken inside. So that was one piece I just wanted to respond in terms of that, connection with the client and the lawyer and the building of trust.
May I comment on your comment?
Yes.
I often would say to people who are going through a separation, what do you think is the most important decision that you have to make? And
right.
Very often people say, oh, making sure my kids are okay, or where am I going to stay, or hundreds of decisions that you think are the most important. And I always say, actually, the most important decision you have to make is choosing the correct lawyer.
Absolutely.
That is the most
absolutely
important thing to make. And you have to think about it. If your lawyer says, I'm always in court, then you have to know they're not going to be available for you,
right,
as much as you may want them to be. And maybe they are litigious, which means they enjoy being in court. They spend a lot of time there, and maybe their emotional intelligence is a little bit lacking. I can't speak for everyone, but if you are with a lawyer who says, I am more about negotiation, I am court averse, I don't spend a lot of time in court, these are questions that you have to speak to a lawyer, because you are going to be relying on them. And if your lawyer is always in court, they may not be responding to your questions and your queries as quickly as you want. And sometimes when you have these files that have a narcissistic personality on them, it feels as though a fire is burning, because the narcissist is saying, if you don't get back to me in 2 hours, you're not going to see the kids, or I'm not bringing them home, or I'm not picking them up, or and so you have these time constraints that in the great big scheme of things aren't urgent, but they are urgent to you because you're being triggered, and they know that you're being triggered. So if you've got a lawyer who's always in court, they probably won't get back to you until the next day. So it's really important when you're speaking to a lawyer to say, what is your availability for me like?
right.
And also, what is the best way of communicating with you? Is it by email? Because for me, it was, please communicate with me via email. I'm not always near my phone, and my phone might be on silent, or I might be out of the office. So that actually, for me, wasn't the best way of communicating with me. But my email, my phone, my cell phone is with me. So what is the best way of communicating with you? And tell your clients, I would say to my client, I will endeavor to get back to you within 24 hours. If you cannot get hold of me and it's urgent, these are the people that you can get hold of, and they will be able to get hold of me. That makes the client feel secure.
Absolutely. And listening, that's really a valuable piece. I was going to mention the other really difficult piece for clients who have experienced this kind of abuse is the setting of boundaries, as you talked about, is please talk to my lawyer has told me not to talk to you. That's very hard to do. I agree with you wholeheartedly, because that's some of the things that I've said to my clients, but they have a hard time saying no.
Of course,
And
the repercussions
because
then will come.
right. So it's a work in progress, right? And this is again where the team comes in as such a critical part of this, because there's different roles for different people. Of course, it's exhausting. They've lived it as a single person in that kind of experience, but now it takes a team to help this person through this whole very horrifying and devastating process. And you mentioned a few characteristics of a lawyer that would be valuable in terms of asking the right questions at the front end. I have a list of what to look for in a therapist. And so at the end, I'll just sort of mention, a little free gift that I have, just that outlines some of those criteria. But just the same as with the lawyer is, there are wonderful therapists out there who do a lot of great work with anxiety and depression and so many other things. This is an area that, has become much more, I'm not going to say common, people have become more aware of it and have now started to identify, oh my God, my partner is narcissistic. And, therapists with the best of intentions are counseling couples, because they often go into couples counseling as a first attempt. And they come out of that where the victim has been scarred unintentionally to stay with or to work on, or again, similar to what you've mentioned in the courtroom, you see what I'm dealing with? And they are belittled and humiliated in front of a therapist. And so they think, oh my God, it must be me. The therapist is saying it's me. So they go home and then they stay in these relationships for a period of time until again, they reach some kind of a wall. And then all of a sudden they think, now what? You can't close your eyes once you've opened them, right? So, or you can't unring a bell, as the saying goes. Once you know. And then it's, how can I stay? And I've worked with so many clients who say, I'm going to stay. And I say, okay, that's great. So let's talk about some of the coping strategies. And what happens is they go back and forth and they stop seeing me because they're feeling guilty that they either stayed, which again, I don't judge, or they've left and they're talking to me and we're starting some of this process, and then they get lured back. And then they disengage with me because they're feeling whatever, right? Shame, guilt, their need for this partner on whatever level that it touches sometimes is greater than their own need for their self-worth and their sense of peace, humanity, all of those things. They think, I need this person, because there's been such a dependency that's been created. And so these extricating yourself from these relationships are extremely hard. And I don't know if, you have any experience or stats in those who start a process, but then stop and reunite, because they are lured back in and sometimes it's, of course, it's for the kids. They say, I'm staying for the kids. It's a very difficult relationship to negotiate from all spectrums, right? Not just being the person who is experiencing it as a victim, but from all of the other people who are trying to support and those who are impacted by a narcissist in whatever realm that they are.
And I think that's a really important point, because like you said, it's not for any of us to judge somebody if they want to go back.
No.
But what we can do is to say, you've made a decision, can we unpack it?
Yeah.
Was there a triggering event? What happened that made you decide
Yes.
you want to go back?
Yep.
What happened? How did it make you feel? Where did it put you in the past? Where was it a fear for the present or for the future? So we can say, if that's your choice, 100% do what you feel is right, but
Yes.
let's make it an informed decision. Let's see what information made you want to make that decision. And if the information, you can go, yeah, no, I still feel 100% fine. But when in doubt, go with that. So when you go, oh, I'm not really sure, but he said, and maybe he's right, and or maybe she's right. Who's to say it's a he or she, that that they're both there. When the second you can see they start feeling they're faltering, then you, particularly as a counselor, can say, or as a therapist can say, let's work with that emotion right now.
Yep.
How do we strengthen? How do we resolve this, or whatever it is? And the thing is that very often the narcissistic personality will upfront say to their lawyer, my wife suffers from mental illness.
Absolutely. Yes.
So the lawyer already thinks, oh God, we've got it. And then
Yes.
the lawyer doesn't know that their client is busy poking the bear in the background to make them look like they are crazy.
Yes, absolutely.
And so the lawyer for the narcissist, their client is this poor person who has to deal with this mental illness and this person at home, and they're just trying to be a good parent and keep it all together, and they get charmed.
Yep.
So it's like I almost wish that there were these like 9 checkpoints that judges knew, that lawyers knew, that this is why this information is so important.
Yes.
To see, because like we were discussing, we were talking the other day when you said all of us have got some kind of narcissistic, and it could be situations. Could be with one particular person, right? But you start seeing the sort of the journey, and the journey always takes the same road and the same roadmap.
Yes. Yeah.
That's really important for people to say, oh, are we on this journey? And then to be able to checkpoint, I know the journey, and we've just hit 3 check marks, and I feel pretty confident that this is the journey, and then they can start making changes.
Right. And that can only happen if the lawyer or the professional knows the journey or the roadmap. And as professionals, I think sometimes we have to be the expert in all things, dealing with all kinds of dynamics with mental health, addictions, and so on. And so this area has been emerging, and things that may have been mental health are now emerging as personality disorders, whether borderline or histrionic or so on. So there's so many different areas that are emerging that we think we know. We're trying to manage the best we can. Mental health. Okay, we're going to be this, we're going to use this strategy, and so on. And so that roadmap, and I think I was mentioning to you that often I've got clients who will come to me, and I apologize, I say she because most of my clients are women because they reach out. I have 1 or 2 males, but the majority, of course, are women. And I know that there's a whole bunch of generational and gender related challenges with that. But most of my clients are women, which is why I say he when I refer to a narcissist. So forgive me, I don't want to generalize, but they will often come to me and say, I think my partner is narcissistic. And so as we will talk, in my head, there is, yep, that fits. Yep, that fits. Oh, yeah, that definitely. And I'll say something and they'll go, yes. And so there's a common language as you get to know the roadmap that you say, yeah, I can't diagnose that he is an NPD, but has some very high, a high rating of these certain characteristics. And then I have other clients who say, oh, I think my partner is narcissistic. And as we talk, no, I don't think your partner is narcissistic, which is good news, actually. But having professionals who work closely with narcissists, needing to be aware of what that can look like. What are those points on that road, or the signs on that road that say, yep, this is it. So as part of, I put together some information just around those 9 points that I've mentioned around the DSM, which are sort of listed as behavioral things that people can sort of recognize. I've also written
a little. Want to maybe just explain what a DSM is?
Sorry, yes, oh my goodness, I can't remember what it's called off the top of the diagnostic.
It's sort of like a professional umbrella of sorts. So
for mental health. So it outlines, and there's different versions, and it's going to come to me after we're done this session, right? Where all of the different mental health diagnoses are listed. And so in that there is the personality disorders, and there are 4 of them, and narcissistic personality is one, and it breaks it down into further characteristics of the level of the traits. And again, many of us have different sort of points that we kind of hit, or in different circumstances, as you mentioned. But when you have 5 out of the 9 or more, 5 or more, it really is on the stronger scale of NPD. And, of course, nobody would be expected to know those off by heart. It's that checklist, I think, Nicolle, you've talked about is, hey, maybe judges need a checklist so that they can identify, what's going on. But it really is an exposure over time that you get to understand this pattern. It's not a one-off, because often, you may be talking to a narcissist at a dinner party or some social gathering and think they're the nicest guy or nicest woman, charming, all of these things. And we can't minimize people's experience behind the scenes. And so, if I were to say, oh, I know so-and-so and they are narcissistic, and oh, no, they're so this and that, and oh my God. And it's like, well, then you've just minimized my experience. Yeah. And so, not that people intend to do that, but from a person who is experiencing this over a period of time, and they are reaching out and they are saying something like, I think my partner is, narcissistic or abusive or whatever, not that we're saying we have to believe absolutely everything, but it's just that it's a moment to pause and to think, why is this person saying that? What is their experience? And, again, from a lawyer's perspective or a therapist, any of these professionals who are working in this capacity, understanding that we need to allow the person to share their experience, and for us to bear witness to that, to honor that, okay, I hear you. And then let's unpick, is this an experience that's happened once or twice? And, in some of the training I've done over the years, it's the first, the worst, and the last. Explain those to me. So what happened the first time, what happened the last time, and the worst time? Those are some of the criteria that we can look at as, oh, there's a pattern. Yep. Okay. And this has been your experience.
In a separation, they say 5% is the law, 95% is emotion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is really at the end of the day. And one of the expectations, when I say, how do you manage your expectation, one of the expectations to manage when you're going through a separation is you may not get the justification that you think you're going to get through the process. And why I say that is, in a regular separation where we're not dealing with a narcissistic personality, your spouse is not concerned about your well-being. They're concerned about their well-being. And Absolutely. So they're not going, oh, I don't want to make you feel sad, or I know that these things upset you. They're not concerned about your well-being. So a narcissist, in fact, is taking your well-being and ensuring that they can screw it over as much as possible. So they're going to use your well-being to their, or not non-well-being to their advantage. Whereas in a regular separation, your spouse might not be concerned about it. But a narcissistic personality is going to use it to their advantage, which is what we said as well. So it's important that expectation is managed. Nothing you do is going to be justified.
Right.
It's going to be torn to pieces. And the legal system can't prevent this. So thinking that the legal system will be able to protect you from that has to be thrown out the window as a valid expectation. The legal system, only you can protect yourself from this. And if you need people to help you, then you need to get a team together to help you ensure that your mental well-being is not going to be shattered, because that is what they want to do. So that's the first thing that we have to do it. And the thing is that the reason that the legal system can't prevent this is because the legal system doesn't live inside your house.
Yes.
The legal system doesn't live inside your conversations. The legal system doesn't live inside your decisions. So to then go, oh, the law wasn't protecting me, it can't.
Yes.
It's still parameters. So, it's really, it's really how the law applies to you is how you protect yourself from your spouse.
Right.
That makes sense?
Yes, and that's the boundary piece again
Yeah.
around how do we create boundaries? And if clients can't right away, then it's how can the professionals help them create boundaries? And if that is at first standing guard for them, so to speak, in that, a lawyer, and again, don't know if it's appropriate, but a lawyer saying, I'm going to be the one to speak to this narcissist or to opposing counsel. So please don't. Maybe not even saying to a client, go tell your narcissist X that you're not going to speak, because they may not have that strength or confidence or ability at that point, at the beginning. And I think it's through that trusting relationship with the lawyer that you can say, you've got my back. Okay, now you're giving me instruction to do X, Y, and Z. And then maybe working with a therapist around how do we get the courage to say no? And what I call it lovingly saying no. So I'm not going to use the word NO because I can't. I'm not wired to say no to people because I'm a people pleaser. That's how, in many experiences I've been raised or trained, so to speak. But how do we say no without using the word no? So it's, let me think about that and get back to you. So you're not agreeing to things, but with more confidence of sort of pushing away a little at a time, they build some strength. They build that reinforcement that they need that can say, okay, he didn't like it, but he didn't have as huge of a tantrum as I thought he would. Yeah. And so, okay, that makes me feel a little bit stronger. And now I can do this. And so those baby steps are really critical, especially at the front end, when you've got a client who is shattered, who is coming to a lawyer to say, oh my God, help me. And a lawyer saying, okay, well, I need you to do this, this, and this, right? So it's speaking two different languages, and maybe sometimes it's the client needs to get some therapeutic work done around, okay, let's weave through what's triggering you. How do we soften some of these triggers? How do we interpret them differently? How do we, as you talked about the neural pathways, how do we shift them a little bit? Okay, he said this. Well, maybe this is how we're going to, interpret this, because I know how he's going at it, but we're going to think of it this way. And so it's really reshifting and creating that new pathway, so that they feel more confident. They're moving towards, I feel a little clearer in my head. Okay, I understand what you're asking me now. Now I can give you X, Y, and Z. Here's my non-negotiables. We talk about that with my clients all the time. What are your non-negotiables? And then once you've got them, and that takes them some time, because a lot of them have never thought that they could have non-negotiables. And then once they do, it's like, oh, okay, this is your non-negotiable, but you allowed it to. So let's bring it back and let's think about, why did you allow yourself to whatever? You have to trust yourself. We have to work on, you have the right to. And that's my new mantra, is you have a right to, or I have a right to. I have a right to say no. I have a right to feel this. I have a right to say this. I have a right to, because we've been taught that we don't have any right at all. So it's relearning around, who am I, right? That's the identity work that we're going through. So
there are a few things that I want to touch on there. The one thing, just because this point I have to make, but I think when you're going through a separation, it's as though you've been hit by two arrows, each of them painful. The first arrow is the fact that how your spouse is treating you, because unless it's an amicable separation, but for the most part, your spouse treats you in a way that is unkind, hurtful, disrespectful. And so that's the first shot. It's like, is this the person that I married? Is this what our relationship has come down to? And so that's very, very painful. And then the second arrow that gets shot at you is how the law applies, where you think the law should be helping me and it's not helping me, or my lawyer should be doing this and my lawyer is not able to do that. And then that also makes you feel terrible and going, is this really worth it? Can I really deal with this?
Right.
This isn't fair, whatever it is. So going back to what you were saying, I think I would spend a lot of time with my clients understanding who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so saying, what are your strengths? And so I had this one client who was a firefighter, really, really lovely guy. He had a temper, but he was a great guy. Very systematic, very orderly, very, things done, like a fantastic guy. But when it came to finances, he got overwhelmed and he got flustered. So when you say, can you get me 6 months of bank statements, for him, it's all, no, I don't know what it's
Right.
stopped. I don't know what it is. And so, but upfront, he said, I get overwhelmed with anything to do with finances. And so I would know that when it was time for me to say, hey, I need you to give me your tax returns, or I knew that it had to be done in a way to say, can you do it within this amount of time? If you have trouble, we can help you with this, or we can connect with the bank, or giving them strategies, because otherwise the overwhelm is just overwhelming and you don't know what to do. So it's really important when you speak to a lawyer to say, these are the things that I get very overwhelmed with, and when I'm not able to think properly.
Great.
So it's important that, you know, these conversations are had so that you don't get embarrassed, because very often, and again, I'm stereotyping, which I shouldn't, but very often the man kind of does all the finances and pays all the bills and, you know, does all of the, not in my marriage, but you know, we've got pink jobs and blue jobs, and we have,
yes,
you know,
yes.
But very often a woman, you know, when you go to law and they say, well, how much do you spend on hydro and how much do you spend on Rogers, and they don't know. Then they think not only are they feeling so small and vulnerable and ignorant that they go through separation, now they're feeling ashamed that they can't answer these very simple questions the lawyer's asking them, which sometimes it's so overwhelming. They go, you know what, I can't deal with this right now. I'll stick with the guy, or I'll stick with the woman. So understanding that and saying, these are the things that trigger me, and for lawyers saying, it's okay to be overwhelmed, because I bet your husband doesn't know how to make lasagna and cheesecake.
Good point. Yeah.
And he wouldn't be overwhelmed if we said, give us the ingredients.
Right.
But he might be overwhelmed and would say, it's not my thing. Don't know how I can figure it out. You know, so why do we get so overwhelmed and we say, I don't know how much is in our bank account, and I don't know what's in our RSP, and we've got to
That's judgment, right? So that they are feeling judged, and that is such a big weapon that a narcissist uses against their partner, is the shame and guilt, and so many are triggered by guilt, and the guilt becomes so debilitating that they stop in their tracks, or they apologize, or they, you know, all of the coping strategies that we've developed in order to maintain these relationships on some even keel, although that's an illusion because there's no even keel, is what they do. And so if you trigger somebody who's experienced this type of toxicity, it can hijack them, it can derail them. They don't know what to say, and they don't want to look stupid, right? They don't want to look confused or that they doubt themselves. And so it's a very it's a landmine, not just in dealing with the narcissist, but also in dealing with the person who's experienced this kind of abuse.
Absolutely. And I think it's annoying. I know when I have a client who's too apologetic, or is apologizing to me, it's a red flag that something's not right, because clients who are confident, they know what they're doing, will never apologize for their confidence. And, you know, they just, and I do find that when clients are too apologetic and apologizing to me all the time, there's a reason. Yes, absolutely. Well, Nicolle, we're past time. Oh my gosh. We could probably talk about this for another hour or 2 hours. So I just want to say thank you. It's been wonderful. And I think we can probably do many more of these with so many different areas and angles of narcissism. And I want to thank you for the suggestion to do this live, even though it's not my comfort zone. It's really pushing out of my comfort zone, but that's okay. We got to learn. And I just wanted to leave with, we will put this recording on my YouTube channel. So if people who missed it or had to leave early, they can catch the whole thing. I'll also leave a link. It'll probably get put up tomorrow with a free downloaded PDF document that has the 9 characteristics of a narcissist. It'll have a little bit of information about what a victim experiences, you know, physically as well as emotionally, as markers, as well as a tip sheet just around how to find a good therapist who knows some things about narcissism, as you're starting to see about FIT. So
I'll leave that in my comments of the YouTube channel, and please subscribe. And I'm not supposed to say that, right? You're supposed to like and subscribe and share. So I'm going to say that. So yes.
Down there.
And stay tuned. We'll probably have some more lives. And thank you all for joining us. And hopefully you got something valuable out of it. Thanks, Nicolle.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope to see
All
all of
right.
you again.
Yes. Take care.